welcome to the next day in the Whiskey Advent Calendar. Today is day 14, and it just keeps getting better. So this is a fun whiskey to talk about. This is that Boutiqu-y whiskey company. They won a ton of awards this year and the last few years for being one of the best independent bottlers in Scotland, but in the whiskey industry. And that leads to a really cool conversation about what is an independent bottler. So you've got companies like Signatory and that Boutiqu-y whiskey company and Duncan Taylor, right? A lot of these are independent bottlers. And what that means is they're a company that sets up, they go and they purchase barrels from distilleries, and then they either mix those barrels together, like Compass Box does, to create their own flavor profile, or they just buy a barrel and bottle it. Or they'll buy a barrel and finish it in a way that distillery wouldn't have finished it, or hold it for an extra few years and release a year's expression that that distillery wouldn't have done. So, you have the Dalmore 12 and the Dalmore 15. So, maybe that Boutiqu-y whiskey company could buy a Dalmore and sit on it and release a Dalmore 14, or a Dalmore 18 port finish or something. That's what independent bottlers do. And so they can create some really interesting whiskeys, and you can get some really special things, or you can just get batches of things that haven't been really released anywhere else or will never be released. So this one specifically is Invergordon. Now, Invergordon is neighbors with the Dalmore distillery. They're up in the Highlands. They actually produce one of the only Highland distilleries, if not the only Highland distillery, that makes a single grain whiskey. Now, remember what I said about single grain? That just means one distillery, and grain whiskey means a mixture of different grains, not just barley. So Invergordon is making single grain whiskey, and this is a single grain whiskey, which is really fun. Single grain Scotch. They've only been around since 1959. They have coffee stills. If you know your history, Aeneas coffee is Irish, invented the coffee still. It's essentially the precursor to the modern column still. And it allows a really fast production and non-stop production of whiskey. When it was invented in Ireland, the Irish said, screw you, we use pot stills, we're not using that thing. So he took it to Scotland, and Scotland said, sure, we'll take it. And they started making grain whiskeys and, went into massive overdrive on their production and just wiped out the competition of Irish whiskey. So all of a sudden, Highland whiskey flooded the market, or Scottish whiskey flooded the market, and the Irish whiskey wasn't able to keep up. Had a big impact on the Irish whiskey industry. So that's pretty cool. It goes back into history, into the 1800s, those coffee stills, and they're using them to make grain whiskey up in the Highlands. So this is fun. 25-year-old grain whiskey. Not something I'm extremely familiar with, but something I've had variations of. Now, you should go look up that Boutiqu-y whiskey company's website or buy some of their actual bottles, because their label designs are awesome. It's, yeah, I'm not going to give you no details. Just go look it up. You'll see what I mean. Now they're owned by White and McKay, who also owns Dalmore, who was then purchased by United Spirits. That smells friendly. It's a little high. Yeah, okay. I was gonna say it's a little high proof. It's almost 50% alcohol. It smells about like that. I'm getting a really high kind of nail polish vibe off of the first nose. I think because that single grain is so light and refreshing, and that it accents the piercing notes and the alcohol content. But behind that is something else. Yeah, that goes down like butter. There's a little burn on the back end. I wonder if that's the alcohol or the actual whiskey itself. Yeah, I think that's the alcohol, because I just evaporated a lot of it in my mouth. And the fumes kind of made me want to cough. So let's take that down a little bit. Take the alcohol content down just a wee bit. Now, I really love independent bottlers. I think they're doing really cool work. And I wish, maybe someone please take me up on this. I wish that someone in the States would take a lesson from Compass Box and Signatory and that Boutiqu-y whiskey company and start doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, when we open our distillery next year, I may just start a side brand where we do this, where we just go around buying barrels from other distilleries and doing our own thing with them and then releasing our own versions. If I can find distilleries willing to do that with me, I would be in that in a heartbeat, because I just think it's so fun to create unique expressions and to work with the existing whiskey industry. I think it helps draw attention to brands that you might not find otherwise. Yeah, I love everything about it. And there's not really anyone in the US doing it. Oh, that got way better. So now that the high proof isn't in the way, I'm getting all the notes of kind of caramel. It's still really light and sparkly. It's almost like it's got glitter in it. If I'm going for a mental image. It's very flashy. It's like a disco ball. It's the disco ball of whiskey. Dancing queen, young and sweet. I won't do that to you. Yeah, I don't want to stop drinking it. That got really good. So it's definitely high proof and it's definitely very sparkly and kind of electric. Not a lot of low end warmth. If we're going in music tones, this one is all highs, no lows. No low notes. There's no bass in this. It's all highs and high mids. It's like the wind section of the orchestra, and none of the strings, none of the low, none of the French horns, none of the trombones, none of the big low brass. It's just all woo. If this was Peter and the Wolf, it would be the bird, if I remember correctly. All right, so once again, another fine whiskey, and we've got some more in our future. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, that Boutiqu-y Whiskey Company. Grateful to have another chance to try something amazing.